Well, hello, everybody. I am here for Your Story Matters conversation with Eugenie. She was here not so long ago and just shared her expertise in the Spotlight Coach scenario, being able to kind of just share the power of the mirror and understanding our negative thoughts and how we can transform them. So if you have not seen her Spotlight Coach conversation, you'll want to go and check it out. It has a lot of amazing golden nuggets in that conversation. Today, we're going to hear Eugenie's story, and she's going to share. Well, let's just say we're going to do a little housekeeping, right? We're going to bring a little bit of housekeeping. So I don't want to destroy her story in any way, because it's always better coming from the person that endured the story. So I'm going to give the floor to Eugenie just to kind of do the housekeeping and share with us her journey and what brought her into this space.
Thank you, Stacy. I appreciate that introduction. That was wonderful.
Oh, we are house cleaning.
Have you found the Windex for your mirror yet? Have you?
It's a good question. I think so. Sometimes
okay.
It can be a little cloudy.
And is your mirror nice and clean and reflective, and can you truly see down to your soul?
Depends on my day. Let's be real. I'm gonna be
real. Or is your mirror dark and dirty and impenetrable, where you cannot see yourself and don't know your identity anymore? I have been both places. I have been here.
Yes.
And now I am here.
Yes.
Because even if it gets smudged a little bit, I know who my Windex is.
Oh, so good.
Okay? There are words that my clients use to describe me now that I have not always embodied. And those are life changer, transformer, hero, and brain organizer.
That's a good one.
Me organizing anything, just completely me. But that is one of the words that they use to describe me. And I can now look in my mirror and I can see that that is a part of who I am. I do help people organize their brains when they're so cluttered that they can't find their way through that clutter. I had a pretty wonderful childhood growing up in Fairfield, California with my mom and dad and my two sisters, because I'm the oldest, I'm the old lady. And we had a wonderful childhood. We lived in Fairfield, California. My dad was in the Air Force for 21 years, and he was married to my mom for 8.5 years of that. So not the whole 21 years. And we really I did not have a faith at that point in time, really. I knew who God was. I knew who Jesus was. I knew why we celebrated Easter and Christmas. But my dad was Catholic, and because he married my mom and he'd been divorced, he had been excommunicated.
Yeah.
And then he refused to raise us all Catholic because he wanted us to have a choice. And my mom was raised Presbyterian, and we couldn't find, she from a small town family church, so she could not find a church that she felt comfortable in. So we didn't go to church. I knew that God existed, but I really didn't know God. I didn't know Jesus. When I was 8.5 years old in 1971, a long time before some of y'all were even born, yes, my dad retired from the military. I went through, now I don't have a story of abuse or trauma or anything like that, but this was a horrific traumatic event for me because I was uprooted from Fairfield, California. And believe me, my roots were kicking and screaming down here. They were not happy at all about moving. And I was unsuccessfully transplanted in the small, cliquish southern town of Somerton, South Carolina.
Mhm.
After the honeymoon wears off, where the new girl and everybody's like, oh, let's get to know her. She's new and different. Well, kids start thinking like their parents do sometimes. And that's when the bullying and the teasing started. And I realized that there were such big disparages with socioeconomic status. My last name was Ermis, and it still is Ermis, but it was not an old Somerton name. My dad was from Texas and he was Czech. That's how Ermis came into being. So Ermis was very different. And the kids at school did not make the connection between my mom being an Elliott, which was an old Somerton name. I think some of the worst things that happened was my two best friends, who I thought were my best friends then, would torture me. They would lock me in the attic closet in the dark, go back and play their games, ignoring my screams and my fear in this dark attic. And I wonder why I'm claustrophobic to this day. Yeah. This dark attic. And then bring me out like, oh, everything's fine. But it wasn't fine.
No. And that is traumatic.
Yeah. And that did happen. And believe it or not, those two women are two of my best friends today.
Oh, wow. God really redeemed that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that was after that. And after I beat her up a bunch. I sure did. I threw her down the snow and told her there were snowballs, and she never bothered me again in that way, ever. But that may have been how God took care of it too. I needed to show that I was a stronger person than she perceived me as.
Right.
And the other part was I also realized people had a certain idea of what pretty was or beautiful was. And in our town, it was blonde hair, blue eyes, real thin. And I was thin, but real thin. And you had to have this sweet little Southern accent just because you grew up in that area. Well, I didn't. I had a very flat accent because I had grown up in California. I had one of my best friends who I met in Vacation Bible School. And she was I was so excited because she met me at church and not school. So she did not know I wasn't one of the cool kids at school. I was, but Vacation Bible School, I was a totally different person because I was in my element. I had come to know Jesus. I had come to know God, and I had found my tribe in there. And she came to Vacation Bible School and we hit it off. And I was like, oh yes, I'm going to have a friend at school. I was so excited. I mean, really excited. And for the first 2 weeks, we had lunch, we talked, all that kind of girl stuff you do. And then she just ghosted me. I think that's the word they use now, ghosted.
Yeah, that is the word.
She just flat out ghosted me totally. And one day I asked her, I said, I'm not going to use her real name, but I said, Elizabeth, what happened? What happened? She said, well, we can't be friends. My heart was crushed. And then she said, we can't be friends because you're not one of the cool kids. And I want to be one of the cool kids. And that was like a slap in my face. I was just like, really? Really? And I think that's a point I really started to kind of withdraw into myself at school. I wouldn't speak unless spoken to. I didn't smile a whole lot. And I kind of just withdrew into myself. When I was at home, I was a totally different person. I was the mom and dad of my sisters, and I was comfortable there. I had all my critter friends who didn't care what you looked like or sounded like or anything. And so I was known for walking uptown with 2 dogs and maybe 3 or 4 cats and whatever else following behind me uptown,
I love it.
A lot of times I'd have to turn around and make sure they got home before I went uptown so that they wouldn't follow me uptown. But those are my friends. To this day, I have 2 old canines out there. and several cats because they're just cool. They don't care what you look like. As long as
No
you feed them and
judgment.
pet them and love them,
Yes.
they're good to go. And I also learned how cruel people's parents could be and how it affects your inside. One of my best friends, I'll call her Elizabeth too, just because it's a good name to use. And it's easy for me to remember. Elizabeth, I would go see her because she's one of my good friends. And if her mother was there, she never, ever missed a chance to say, your sister, and this is quotes, your sister must have come from the milkman, Jeannie, because she is just gorgeous.
Oh,
What happened to you?
wow.
So my needless to say, my mirror was like this.
Yeah.
I no longer knew who I was and I couldn't see me.
That's right.
However, one of my saving graces was I had found my tribe away from school and away from my friends as I became very involved with the Camp Harmony Youth Council, with which we planned all the summer camps for the kids. It was with the Presbyterian Church, so it was a faith-based organization. And I found my tribe. I knew Jesus loved me. I knew God loved me. I knew these incredible young people loved me. And we worked together as a team. And they didn't care where I came from. They didn't care what my last name was. They loved me for me, just like Jesus does.
Yeah.
And that's where I found my tribe and my happy place. And I think that's what helped me survive school. It just did. That and my parents. I had very good parents. And then there was a sermon at church. And it came from Timothy. And Timothy is known as one of the tyrannical text. And in that text, it talks about, and I'm very much paraphrasing because I can't quote you chapter.
It's all good. I paraphrase the word all the time.
And I don't want to know this chapter and verse because it's really horrible about women in the tyrannical text.
Right.
And you really can't throw them out because they're part of the Bible. They're part of the Bible, so they're there. But I think you have to look at them in a hysterical. I was pretty hysterical at that time, historical point of view. But I heard this sermon from Timothy about women being seen and not heard, women being very demure and being oh gosh, what's the word? I can't think of it.
We weren't allowed to preach and be leaders in a church.
Man, you have to be, what is it? Subservient.
Yeah.
Subservient.
Be submissive. Yeah.
Yeah, submissive. There we go. Submissive. I couldn't think of that word. And I even went to see a Christian counselor at one point in time who told me that I could never get married because I could not be submissive enough.
Oh,
and then, yeah, he told me I better not get married because I could not be submissive enough. And I went to see my preacher, who I love, Mr. Troutman. He's a very, 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 very dear man. I love him to this day. He's also my basketball coach. I can remember him getting this red on the floor on a basketball game because he was like, but he wasn't gonna say anything bad. He'd be so red and yelling and
passionate.
Yeah, passionate. He was a good guy. But I went to see him about this text. And I said, Mr. Troutman, I need to talk to you. He said, well, okay, let's talk. I said, what about that text in Timothy that you preached on Sunday? He said, Jeannie, I love you and you have a great day, but we cannot discuss this. And he went back inside and I laughed. I'm going, oh my gosh, what the heck? So anyway, at that point in time, I was like, well, does Jesus really love me?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Because I'm a woman. Does God really love me because I'm a woman? I know it says God made man in his image. Then it says male and female, but it doesn't say God made man and woman in his image. Right. So anyway, I was just, I started wearing these masks, I've hid behind my faith versus being faithful. I hid behind it because I had no idea where I was, who I was at that point in time. And then I wore a mask of the good little girl. See, I didn't have wild college days because I wasn't going to come back home and everybody caused me to take my mask down. That just wasn't going to happen. I didn't have my wild oats until after I moved away from home.
Right.
Because I couldn't come home and be not known as a good little girl. I couldn't.
Right.
And that went on for several, I guess you'd say decades, because I've lived 6 decades now. That sounds horrible.
No, that sounds brilliant.
I know, but when you say, I've been here 6 decades.
Like, you go, girl. You rock it. Yes.
Oh, we're going to rock the 60s. I promise you that.
That's right. Just 60 is the new 30.
I think so. Why not? And I moved to Somerville, South Carolina. And I even had tried to work for a church one time, and the church ate me alive. It really did. It ate me alive. I found out people are going to have power at church if they can't have power anywhere else. And if you get in their way, they're going to make you move. That's just the way it is.
And that's what breaks my heart. Sorry, I'm actually tearing up at that because there's so many people that have stories that have been hurt by the church.
Oh, yeah.
And it breaks my heart.
Yeah. I mean, I actually was I was a youth minister. And at one point in time, I had this group that was running the senior youth, and I would ask them for agendas. Oh, we may be doing that. We may not be doing that. I said, parents are calling me to find out where their children are because you say one thing and you go do another thing. And then they're worried about where their children are. And I don't have an answer because I don't know where the heck you are. Anyway.
Yeah.
I actually had one of those youth ministers with his finger right that far from my nose saying, if you don't leave us alone, I will come find you after church one day and I will hurt you. Mm-hmm.
He did not have the audacity to say.
He did. He did. And I just sat there and I just stared him down like, go ahead, Buster. You go right ahead.
Make my day.
I know exactly who to call. And I think he was kind of I think he was kind of abusive towards his wife. For some of the things she told me, I was like, oh. I said, I wanted to say, I'm not a mealy mouth woman. I will have you for lunch. Anyway.
You go, girl.
Even had that experience. But when I moved to Somerville, I wouldn't go to the Lutheran church for a long time because that's what I was, and that's where that incident had happened. But I met Pastor Blaylock, and I asked him to be my spiritual director because he was a really good man, and he was able to explain some of the tyrannical text passages about it's not so much being a doormat, it's about the man has more the brawn, and he is supposed to go through and make the passage clear for you to walk through with him. And then with the lioness, the book I'm reading now, it's about, they work together as a tribe. The women are strong and sleek and nurturing, but they can also be ferocious and pretty, so.
Don't mess with a mama. No way.
That's right. So he helped me see that. And then I also went to a retreat called Via de Cristo, which is kind of like the walk to Emmaus that people go to and that type thing. But you go, no cell phones or computers. They wake you up. They tell you when to go to bed. They feed you. You do these wonderful exercises. And that's where, for the first time in a long, long time, I woke back up to the grace and the love and the kindness and the friendship of Jesus. I could feel my heart coming alive again.
Aww.
And at that retreat, I was able to take down those masks. And I did it fearfully because I was like, oh gosh.
Am I going to get rejected? Like,
yes.
all that would run through my head.
yeah, rejected, shunned, like, oh, who do you think you are? All this kind
Ridiculed.
of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it didn't happen.
Oh,
They
praise.
loved me for who I was.
That's right. Amen.
And I can't say life is always easy because it's not.
No, we're not
But
promised an easy life, are we?
no, but in here, I know where my strength is. I know who loves me, and
Mhm.
I know who brings me peace and contentment, and even joy in the worst times. I mean, I've had some really horrible, horrible dark nights of the soul, but there's still a little spark of joy there
Yeah,
because I know that Jesus will never leave me,
that's right.
and the
He's our
Holy Spirit's
strength
in
and our
there.
comforter. One thing about the submission piece and in the word men are supposed to be within our household. The word tells us that men are to love their wives as Christ loved the church, and women are to respect their husbands. And if that was easy for us, it wouldn't be in the text, right? So men can easily give respect because they know how to receive it. They know what they want to receive. So they can easily respect you as an individual or as a woman. But to love you the way God loves the church, it's hard for them to do that. They don't understand the depth of that love. But we're hardwired for that. We're nurturing. That's, maybe that was the rib that God took out of Adam, that nurturing piece he took out and gave it to us. But it comes second nature to us. We're hardwired to be loving and nurturing and forgiving and to really meet people where they're at. But respect, that sometimes is a harder thing for us to give up because we don't know how to give our spouses that level of respect that they're desiring. So that's why God put that text in there, is so that we can have kind of like a guideline as to have a healthy relationship, is
Right,
like
right.
if our men can understand how to love us like Christ loved the church, which is like dying for the church.
Yes,
Is
yes.
he willing to lay his life
And
down?
and if they break that vow, that actually, like this is something like with divorce and things, because some people are so against that. And I have had women I know who their church and their leaders have told them they have to stay with an abusive man, even because of their belief system in that church. But Pastor Blaylock also helped me see that if a man breaks that vow of loving their wife as Christ loved the church, then she is actually released from that
Yeah.
vow because he's already broke, and vice versa. I mean, vice
Yeah,
versa.
absolutely. Because women can dish it out just as much, especially
Oh yeah,
nowadays with the Me Too movement. Women are rising up with this like dominant nature, and I'm not against women having a voice and really putting their best foot forward. But in a relationship, it's a two-way street. Like
yes.
if we have to come to terms as to who the roles of a marriage. There's a reason why God put those things in the word. It's to bring that unity within the the marriage.
Because he knew it was going to be hard.
It is.
And I don't think that you have to be married. I mean, I'm single. I've been single for 60 years. You know, have I had opportunities to get married? Yes, I have. However, I also only want to get married once.
That's right.
And if I got married to any of those fellows that had asked me, I would have been married 5 times,
Oh,
or either wearing orange in jail somewhere.
oh. Well, you must have chose white right then.
I did. Except for one fella, and I was so smitten with him, but he just wasn't ready. He just got out of a relationship. He just wasn't ready, and we lost contact. I found him many moons ago, but he was already married to a very nice woman, and you know. You don't mess with those kind of things. At least I
No,
don't think you do.
no,
I don't think you do.
never. No, you don't
But
know how
anyway,
frightened.
that's part of my story. And I think God has a special place for women. I
He
think he has
does.
special feelings for women. And a friend of mine, I can't remember the exact word she used, but it was a Greek word, and it meant that God's intense, immense, unfathomable love for women. I mean, he gave us the ability to create life
He did.
in our bodies.
We did a study in the fall, The Storm Inside by Sheila Walsh, and we studied 6 different women within the Bible. And it was such a depth of love, like that deepened my love for God, because just hearing these women's stories within the Bible, how Jesus went out of his way to rescue these women, even when it wasn't politically correct to
Correct.
do so. He didn't care. He went out of his way to heal these women, to save them, to forgive them of whatever sin that they had found themselves in. The prostitute, the Mary Magdalene, who was possessed by demons, he went out of his way to heal her from all of that. The woman at the well that was, had many different relationships and was with a man that wasn't even her husband. And back then that was very taboo. Nowadays it's like, so what's the big deal? Right?
It's pretty
But back
normal
then
now.
it was very taboo. And he laid it out to her, and he says, he forgave her and loved on her and didn't judge her of her actions. And that to me speaks volumes to the way Christ looks at us as females and women in this culture, because it's easy for us to be like, oh, we've been suppressed. They've tried to mute us, not giving us options to vote. And then we fight for all of these things throughout history where we get a little bit of traction. We're still not being paid equally as men. And some women are more brilliant than some of the men out there that can do the job better. I remember even my own experience when I was a single mom, and this is totally sidetracking your story, and I'm so sorry for that.
Hey, that's okay. We're good.
Yeah.
My story's done.
When I was a single mom, I was working security at a slaughterhouse,
Oh,
and it was
wow.
a night shift job, and it wasn't paying super well, and it was super boring. And I had seen this crew would come in, they called it the sanitation crew, that came in and cleaned the slaughterhouse, like made sure all the equipment was sanitized and up to government standards to be able to start production the next morning. And they were hiring, and they paid like twice as much as what I was making. And so I had asked the head boss that was coming in every night, he had to pass through security, he had to pass by me.
That's right. He had to see you.
And I'm like, I hear you're hiring. Like, can I apply and come and work for you? He's like, oh no, we're not hiring. I said, yeah, but you are. Like, I'm signing in all your new hires. I can see that you're hiring.
Yeah.
So every time he would come through, I would ask. I was relentless, and it wasn't the best job, but it paid really good.
Paid more.
And it was a graveyard shift job where I could still be home with my daughter during the day. And so I just got tired, and on my break, I like marched my way into the cafeteria, and I sat in front of him and I said, listen, if you give me one chance, I promise you, I will do just as good enough job, if not better, than any guy you have on your crew. I had no idea what I was getting myself into.
Bad.
But I had that like boldness in me, and
Yes.
at that time I was still very broken girl. Like, I just lost my mom. Like, I'm still a fish out of water. I still didn't have a relationship with Christ. Like, he was still a swear word in my world. I had no idea the depth of love that he had for me. But I had marched in, I demanded that he give me a job. And so he kind of snickered, and he humored me. He's like, okay, like, we'll hire you. They gave me the crappiest job, literally. And the boys were so relentless at trying to really get me all frazzled out. They dropped a 5-gallon pail of blood that they had found over my head when I was cleaning a boot wash. They would put eyeballs in my hand. They would throw baby cow fetuses at me. They were not nice. But I was like, oh, I'll show you boys. I'll show you.
That's right.
And so I was there for about 8 years.
Oh, wow.
Ended up leaving as one of the lead supervisors. I had the best government scores on any area within the space that I was responsible for. And I was one of their hardest workers. And when I left, we had another probably 6 or 7 women that worked on our team that were killing it just as much as I was. So I'm like, yeah, there's something about that, right? Like, if we want to come into that world and prove ourselves in a masculine position that would be portrayed as one, right? We're going to work twice as hard to prove ourselves.
Yeah.
And just give us a chance. Like we will work our butts off to show that we are very much capable, just as much as the next guy.
Now, what I will say to that, though, is I do think that there are some jobs that women do better than men and men do better than women.
That is true.
I really do, because we both have different strengths and weaknesses, and together I think we can come together and really do a jam up job. Like those guys tried to break you.
They did.
But it wasn't your feminine side that got you through that. It was the masculine side.
It was.
That got you through that.
I got a little growly.
That's why you're like, okay.
I get you back. Absolutely.
And just like in the nursing world, female nurses don't get paid as much as male nurses do.
And they're more nurturing.
Well, and they've been doing it a lot longer.
Yeah.
You know, I think
just so you all know here, Eugenie is a nurse as well. So
oh yeah, I'm a nurse as well.
just so you all know here, she can speak on that from her own experience.
Yeah, I can.
She's there.
They still don't, especially in the management, when you get upper management.
Yeah.
And women have been doing that for years, and they know it backwards and forwards.
You could do with their eyes closed.
Oh yeah.
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 It is definitely, you know, those things that try to, you know, and I'm a huge believer, especially when we have a call from God. I believe that every one of us on this planet is called by God, whether we listen to it or not. That is our path, right? But every one of us has that call. And at the beginning of life, the devil knows. And whether anybody wants to believe of good and evil, it's out there. We see it in all the cartoons and all the movies, good and evil. It's a real thing. When the devil knows that God has a big plan for our lives, he's going to try to take us out and suppress us and crush us and increase our insecurities and self-doubt and really just put all those things. So when your friends were locking you in the attic, that was them listening to a side that was probably whispering in their ears, oh, this would be so funny, ha. But it was like the devil was using them.
Like, it's not funny, guys.
Right? But the devil was using them. Like my brother, he used to do some really horrific things to me as a kid. There was one time my parents, it was Friday the 13th, and they were right into the scary movie. I hate scary movies, and rightfully so because of my childhood, but they were into the scary movies. And so they were over at a friend's house. So we all went, they were watching Friday the 13th on Friday the 13th. And they were having like this marathon. And then they decided to ship me and my brother home. It was a small town, so we were just walking up the road to go home. And my brother pulled out a screwdriver from his pocket, and he got these crazy eyes, and he starts, I'm going to kill you. And he started chasing me. And I was so scared. I came into my house. We had this walk-in linen closet. I climbed to the top shelf, and I buried myself in the blankets, and I did not come out till the next day. There was no way I was coming out with a parental consent, like parental
no.
people in the house. Like I was scared. But yeah, those things try to take us out, right? They try to like keep you captivated in that fear, or even people speaking these negative things over you, like you're never going to get married, you can't submit, like all those things that were spoken over you were trying to sabotage you and what God's plan is for you, and hold you back from a much bigger goal and purpose in life. Right now, Jesus is your husband, and that has got to be the most
Well,
righteous husband ever.
Jesus is also my Windex.
Amen.
That's the Windex for my mirror that I found was Jesus.
The housekeeping. So we do got to just do a little housekeeping every once in a while.
Still have to do housekeeping.
Yes. It doesn't stop. We always have to check and balance our spirit, our motives, our thought process. We had that conversation last time when you came and shared in the Spotlight Coach, of just being able to recognize the thoughts that we entertain and the ones that we allow to paint this image of who we are. Like, I love that you bring this mirror into your practice and the way you work with clients, because it's a tangible visual tool that we all have in our homes. Everyone has a mirror, at least one in their home.
They do.
So, right, it's a tangible tool that we can look into, and we can really embrace the visuals that we're seeing. Like, sometimes when we spoke about this last time, is when we look in that mirror, we don't see a reflection. Like, we might not see who we want to see. We'll just see all the things that we want to pick apart on ourselves. Like, we might not even see our eyes. We might just be focusing on our hips. Like, who knows where we're at in our visuals of who we are. But when we can get that Windex, the Jesus sauce, and spray and clear that mirror just a little, we can start to see ourselves in his image, because we are created in his image. And when we start picking ourselves apart, we're telling God he made a mistake, and he don't make mistakes.
No.
Right?
No mistakes.
None.
I mean, I get tickled when I think about the Windex, because I also think about, don't know if you've ever seen the movie My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Oh, who hasn't? Oh, come on. If you haven't, you need to go watch it. It's funny.
That little funny man that goes, "Oh, acne, Windex. Oh, sad, Windex."
It's true.
It was just, I just got tickled when I started doing the mirror. I was like, oh, this reminds me of My Big Fat Greek Wedding. That was also about a woman who was finding herself.
Yes. Yes.
So anyway.
And embracing every bit a part of us, right? Like, we might not be where we want to be, but that doesn't mean that you won't get there.
But and also because you need all of it. Even when you're angry, you need that anger. When you're happy, you need that happy, because if you only have one side of the coin, it's going to flop over. It's not going to stand up, because it's not balanced. And if you have both sides of the coin, it can stand up. Like when you do holding books in a bookshelf, you got to have two ends, or else they flop over.
Absolutely.
So you've got to have, I mean, some of the things that women have been taught are negative things to have, like anger and assertiveness and brilliance. Some of those things that they've been taught are part of a man's world. They kind of negate, but if they don't have those, they can't stand strong in their faith, in anything, because they just kind of flop over when the wind starts blowing too hard. Right. Because the wind's going to blow. I mean, it's going to blow.
Yeah. We all go through a storm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's and you got to, and Jesus is part of that. God's part of that. The Holy Spirit is part of that. Yeah. And if you don't have that, you're going to bend.
It's true.
Hopefully not break.
Yeah.
At least bend.
Just to explaining that, I remember like the season of my life when I was bitter and angry, and I was aggressive, and I was a manipulator, and I was not nice to men at all. Like, I took advantage. I mistreated them. There was a lot of ugly in my life. And when Christ got a hold of me, he started revealing my actions, because when I was in it, I didn't think that there was anything wrong. Like, I thought you know, what's wrong with you guys? Like, I didn't see my manipulation. I didn't see my bad character. I didn't see it. But as soon as Jesus came, he took the Windex,
That's right.
gave me
You're
a
like,
visual to my soul,
no.
and realized that, hey, you got some ugly sides to you, but that doesn't say that you are ugly. But these are the things I want you to start working on. And he is such a gentleman. And this is where a lot of people get afraid because of the church and how the church has hurt so many people with their religious containers. And sorry to get all choked up, but it does.
I've seen it happen.
It hurts me that so many people turn away from this God-loving with Jesus to be able to come in and filter and flush out the ugly in their life because of this container that the church has put people in, that they are, you know, even being your dad in the Catholic Church being like, you know, kicked out because he got remarried. Well, who are they? They're not the judge.
I wouldn't raise his children Catholic. You know, that was,
yes.
His bad nephew was divorced, but then he wouldn't raise his children Catholic. And I guess we were kind of, what do you say, out of wedlock children as far as the Catholic Church was. What's that word?
Out of wedlock? Or
out of wedlock, but there's a word for that in there.
Is it a bastard child? Like, I don't know what they call it.
I can't remember the word for it, but anyway.
Well, then I would never be accepted into the church because I'm a product of prostitution. So I'm sure they would start digging a hole in the backyard to bury me in. But that's the thing, like this whole container of religious acts and rules and regulations, that is not the heart of God. And so if someone here is hearing your story in our conversation today, if you have been hurt by the church, and I know it's a real thing because Eugenie's been hurt. I have been hurt by the church. People that I thought were my friends in my tribe within the church setting have hurt me. And I didn't know how to shake it. I didn't know how to, well, maybe church isn't for me. And, you kind of step away for a little bit, but God's like, no, that's not what I want for you. He loves you so much. And his promises that whatever work he started in you, he will not stop until it is completed. And that completion day is the day he comes back to rescue us from this hellbound earth that we live in. But I just want to encourage you just to step out and build that relationship with Christ. And we honestly do not need to build that relationship within the four walls of a church setting. You can, right? Like I learned that last year is that there's many different avenues of having that relationship. Some of them are very much into the doctrine and the theology and learning all the different texts and all the different, they can memorize, they know the Bible inside and out. They can recite any scripture, any address. That is so not my way. No. And then there's people that do it through music and arts and painting and dance and expression, just being able to share their form of worship to the sovereign God. And there's others that are like need to be in nature, be by in the mountains or the woods or by water, just to be able to feel God's presence. So we all have our different way, our different path to Christ, and he created you that way. So don't get stuck in this container that the religious walls have tried to put around us.
If you're stuck in a container, just know that there's little steps there, and you can take it one rung at a time until you're able to stay over the top. And if you need to stay in there a little while longer because it's scary, just keep taking a look until you're able to come all the way out. Yeah. Because sometimes it's really scary.
It is.
And you have to kind of creep out. I had a lady, actually she's from Canada. We have lost touch, but I coached her a little bit in school. And we talked about, she said she felt like she was in a cage. And we talked about unlocking the cage and opening the door. Just take it one step at a time. The first step was unlock the cage.
Yeah.
And keeping the key so we get locked back in.
That's right.
And then the next step was to open the door to see what's out there a little bit. And then you she sat there, and then she said, okay. And then she would peek out a little bit.
Yeah.
And then before you knew it, she was out of her cage. But it took just, step by step by
You
step.
do. You have to have grace on yourself.
Yeah.
Especially if you've been through a lot of hurt and pain and trauma and different things that have kind of brought you to this place. Not one of us has gone through life without some kind of a scar or hurt in some way, or rejection or abandonment. We've all experienced or felt it in some level, and some more catastrophic than others, for surely. But really, your mountain is just as big as my mountain. We might have two totally different scenarios, but the mountain is still enormous to us in our perception. And so don't ever let anybody minimize your mountain. If your mountain's big, have grace on yourself, and you don't need anybody's permission to minimize your mountain. That's really up to you. Right?
And not to minimize your journey either.
Right, because there's a lot of
because those are, you go through major. I went through a period of time where I lost my dad died, my mom died, and my 21-year-old nephew died, and a dear uncle died in the middle of that, in a period of from 2012 to 2016.
That's a lot of loss.
Talk about someone who was angry, and I mean, pencil thin, and it was awful. It was awful.
Absolutely.
But you start coming back little by little by little. Because sometimes the sunlight is too bright, and you just kind of have to.
And grief comes for people, the processing of grief comes in so many different ways.
Yes.
So how I would process grief is going to be different than the next person. I know my older brother, when we lost our mom, he went into addictions, and he was stuck in that place for 23 years.
Wow.
He is 2 years sober. He's found Christ, and he has turned his life around, and I couldn't be more proud and pleased for his journey. But that was a really long process of him ignoring the grieving process. He didn't want to give himself permission to do that, because he almost took responsibility of her suicide, which is not his responsibility, but he felt that it was. He was the oldest of us siblings. And so he really took on that burden, and it was heart-wrenching to watch him go through those life choices. But we couldn't have willed him out of it. We couldn't have done anything else for him, but
that was his
yeah,
journey.
we had to put up boundaries, because when people are in addictions, it can get abusive and very toxic. So we had to put up boundaries. But when he started making those steps to start facing that pain, we were there for him and loved on him. And now he's completely turned his life around, and I'm so pleased. But it takes time, and you have to have.
It does. And everybody's journey is different. And it's not about forgetting the person. You don't forget the person. You don't forget the pet. You don't forget the relationship. I call it, you grow forward in grief. Because I don't forget my mom and my dad and my nephew. They're all very much a part of who I still am. I'm sorry, I gotta look at this because I've got a. Okay.
You have another call.
No, I actually have choir practice.
Ooh, you are on choir. You're going to have to bless us with that one day. That's awesome.
Oh no! I'm the filler voice. I really am. I'm not.
Do not minimize.
No, really. I'm saying I'm more of a Amy Grant, Tasha Layton, like the song I shared about the roots. More of that kind of voice, and not. I really am not the high soprano voice.
Oh, sister, I'm like the seagull off the Little Mermaid. Wow, wow.
Yeah, when I get up there, I go like that.
I wouldn't be in the choir because I'm tone deaf, but I would flag, I would worship and dance. So that's my gift. But yeah, I could keep talking about this because this topic is so there's so much meat and so much richness within this conversation. that I could keep going, but I know we do have to kind of.
Well, I will come back anytime.
Yes, this has been
I will
so
come
good, Eugenie.
anytime.
And so like, if you have not seen her Spotlight Coach conversation, definitely go over and check it out, because she goes deep dives into some of the tools that she uses in her coaching practice. And as you can tell, she's a nurturing, loving woman with wisdom and lots of different experiences that it's.
Lots of learning experiences.
Yes, but that's part of life, right? If we
Yes.
don't learn, we're not growing. And
No,
so we
no.
have to sometimes, step out of the boat, even when it's scary, and do the tough things. And sometimes that means like facing some of your past. And look how God restored your friendships with those two ladies that used to
Yes.
lock you up. Like, that is only God, right?
I believe so, because we really are good friends now, and we were not.
Well, I
were not.
wouldn't trust somebody that locked me up in a
No.
addict.
No, but
yeah, that's amazing. I love how God has restored that. And he's done similar things like that in my journey as well. I'm just restoring relationships of people that have hurt me deeply. And it's just never ceases to amaze me just how much love our Father has for every single one of us. Doesn't matter what we've done in our past, or what we'll do in our future, because we are not like,
no,
just because we're on this path does not mean we ain't gonna mess up or let somebody down.
we're not done yet.
Somebody, right? We're human too, right? We're gonna make mistakes. So please, like, even if people in the church have hurt you, know that they are just people. And
yes.
And we are not perfect people.
And God doesn't live in those four walls.
People.
Yeah, and God doesn't live in those four walls. That's not what God is.
No, he's omnipresent, right? So
yes.
Thank you so much for coming again today and just sharing your story and just all the richness of that came out of this conversation. I'm just so blessed to have you here.
I'm blessed too. Thank you.
Thank you, love.